안녕하세요. 저는 오늘 사회를 맡은 최원정입니다. 화면 가득 자리해주고 계신 구민 여러분께 감사 인사 먼저 드리겠습니다. 강남구는 올해 배우고 나누며 함께 성장하는 스마트평생학습도시 구현을 위해 강남열린대학을 새롭게 개설했는데요. 오늘은 세계적인 경제학자 제프리삭스 미국 컬럼비아 대학교 석좌교수를 모시고 더 나은 미래를 위한 고민을 함께 해보려고 합니다. 제프리삭스 교수는 국제개발협력과 경제개발 분야의 세계적 석학이죠. 2000년 코피 아난 전 유엔 사무총장과 함께 MDG, 즉 새천년 개발 목표를 시작했고, 이후 반기문 전 유엔 사무총장과 함께 MDG를 지속 가능 개발 목표를 확대하는 데 중심적 역할을 했습니다. 그럼 먼저 이번 행사를 준비해 주신 강남구의 정승균 구청장님의 인사 말씀을 듣고 이어서 삭스 교수님의 강연을 듣겠습니다.
여러분 반갑습니다. 57만 강남구민과 함께하고 배려하고 존중하는 품격 강남을 만들고 있는 강남구청장 정승균입니다. 우선 코로나19로 모두가 어려운 시기에도 불구하고 오늘 온택트 강연에 흔쾌히 응해주신 제프리삭스 교수님과 이 자리에 참여해주신 강남구민 여러분께 환영과 감사의 인사를 전해드립니다. 아시다시피 강남은 경제, 산업, 문화가 집약된 대한민국 제1의 도시로 인구 밀도가 매우 높고 하루 경제활동 인구만 107만여 명에 이릅니다. 이처럼 집단 감염에 취약한 지역적 여건에도 불구하고 강남구는 그동안 무료 선제 검체 검사, 스마트 감염병 관리센터와 같은 방역 시스템을 국내 최초로 앞장서 도입하며 구민들의 건강 안전을 위해 최선을 다한 결과 현재 서울시 내 25개 구청 중에서 19번째로 확진자가 적게 나오고 있습니다. 지금까지 코로나19가 이처럼 잘 관리될 수 있었던 것은 국민 여러분께서 적극 협력해 주신 덕분입니다. 이 자리를 빌려서 어려움을 감수하면서도 높은 시민의식을 보여주신 모든 강남구민 여러분들께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 배려와 존중의 가치를 실천하는 주민들이 사람 향기 나는 지역 공동체를 만듭니다. 이렇게 어려운 때일수록 품격 강남다운 상생 정신을 발휘해서 함께 위기를 극복해 나가야 한다고 저는 생각합니다. 오늘 강연이 포스트 코로나 시대의 지속 가능한 공동체를 고민하고 생각을 나누는 뜻깊은 시간이 되기를 바랍니다. 그럼 모두를 위한 코로나 회복, 연대와 협력의 힘을 주제로 강연해 주실 제프리삭스 교수님을 모시겠습니다.
제프리삭스 교수님, 그러면 시작하시죠. 현재 지속가능성 위기의 현황에 대해서, 특히나 기후변화 위기에 대해서 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you.
So the first point that I would make very clear is that we are still in a big crisis, but fortunately, because the Korean people have done a much better job of control, wearing face masks, obeying the rules than in my country and then in Europe. The big part of the epidemic is raging in the United States and Europe and South America, whereas fortunately in your part of the world, though this is still a dangerous disease, the number of cases is much, much lower. And every day in my work, I try to tell politicians in my own country, please learn from Korea. They did a much better job. They contained the epidemic. The public health system worked better. The testing worked better, and so on. So this challenge is, of course, our biggest challenge, because until the whole world is able to contain the epidemic, we're going to be in an ongoing, rather serious crisis. And in order to stop the epidemic, we need to do two things. One, Europe and the United States and South America and India need to learn from the success in Korea, Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand, because all of the countries of the Asia Pacific region have done a lot better than the countries in Europe and the United States. Second, we need to implement immunization or vaccine coverage everywhere in the world. And this is a big global challenge, of course, because we need to increase the production of these vaccines massively and then have a systematic effort in every country to ensure that most of the adult population is immunized. So you can imagine how hard it is to get cooperation on this. And as you know, countries are fighting with each other to get into the front of the line for the scarce vaccine supplies, rather than cooperating with each other to expand the production of the vaccines as rapidly as possible. Well, this is our big, big challenge. And unfortunately, it's not our only challenge, because even before we had this epidemic, there were so many things that we needed to be cooperating together to solve, with all of the countries in the world working together. Another major challenge, of course, is climate change. And this we have to make progress on, even as we confront the pandemic. And we have many other environmental challenges as well, like heavy air pollution and ocean pollution, and the loss of animal species in many parts of the world. So even besides the COVID pandemic, there's a very big need for global cooperation. And that's why in the year 2015, all of the countries followed the lead of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to adopt Sustainable Development Goals as a framework for cooperation so that we could solve these big problems together. But as you know, it's one thing to adopt goals, and it's another thing to actually cooperate to achieve them. And we've had a very difficult time mobilizing the global cooperation to achieve these sustainable development goals. And Professor Won-Soo Kim was one of the leaders for adopting these goals and for working with governments to convince them how important they are. And Ban Ki-moon was the world's leader in getting these goals adopted. But in the last 6 years, it's been big problems, because even before COVID, we weren't cooperating properly. And one of the biggest problems of all, unfortunately, was my country, the United States, because we absolutely had the worst president we ever had in our history with Donald Trump, a real stupid man who never should have been president. And because of his stupidity, he wasted 4 years when we should have been working on the Sustainable Development Goals. But instead, we didn't work on the Sustainable Development Goals. He just made a lot of noise and a lot of controversy in the world and created big divisions in the United States, so that we actually did not make progress within my country, and we did not make progress globally because we lacked global cooperation during that period. Well, now we're in this new difficult phase. The bad news is the pandemic continues. The good news is we have a much better president now, who is a normal person who I think can help to get us back to global cooperation. At least that's the most important step that we face. So what our new president is trying to do is two basic things. One is, of course, to stop the pandemic in the United States and then help working together with other countries to stop the pandemic globally. And the second thing is to try to forge cooperation with countries around the world to address all of these other challenges, like the climate crisis, so that we can start to find solutions for those crises as well. Well, here I am hoping that all of the major countries, the United States, Korea, Japan, China, the European Union, and others can work together also on the climate change crisis and the other environmental crises. So I'm hoping that we can find a shared responsibility and set of actions that we can take to make the planet safer. What should that be? Well, as you know from President Moon's proposal for a Korean Green Deal, what we need to do everywhere in the world is change our energy system from our use of coal and petroleum and natural gas to use of solar power, wind power, hydroelectric power, and nuclear power and other safe energy sources that don't cause climate change. And this is our big global challenge together. So the Korean Green Deal is a very good idea. I strongly support it. It calls on Korean society to make a big transformation to renewable energy and to electric vehicles and to clean industry, both to stop the climate change danger and also to stop the pollution. And President Biden is recommending a similar set of policies for the United States, also to shift our energy system away from coal, petroleum, and natural gas to wind, solar power, and hydropower. And where I live in New York, the big plan is to use wind power in the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of New York, because it's windy all the time. And it turns out that that amount of wind power is actually enough to provide all of the electricity needs for the northeast of the United States: New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine. All of these big states can be powered by wind power, plus some of the other renewable energy like hydropower and solar power. So we're starting the big transformation here. Europe, like Korea, has adopted a European Green Deal, and now Europe is starting to make these investments as well. And as you may know, China, which is also a very polluting country, has announced plans to clean up the Chinese industry and transform China from its heavy use of coal, as well as petroleum and natural gas, to the use of renewable energy. And President Xi Jinping promised that China would make this transformation before the year 2060. Korea has promised to do it by the year 2050. So too has Japan, the United States, and the European Union. So this is very important for us. And just like fighting the epidemic, it requires a lot of cooperation. So maybe the last point that I'll make before we have the discussion is that we need to avoid new conflicts with a tremendous amount of effort. And that's why we need great diplomats like Ban Ki-moon and Won Soo-kim, who can talk with other countries without creating new conflicts. And as Professor Won Soo-kim knows, I'm a very big believer that we should be cooperating with China, that we should be cooperating with all countries in the world to make sure that we are solving all of these big problems. I'm very much against the idea that China should be treated like an enemy, or that the countries of Northeast Asia can't get along. You know, for all of the difficulties in history of China, Japan, and Korea, and all of the distrust and all of the historical bad experiences, it's really important for these three countries to work together to address these problems. The truth is that Northeast Asia, meaning Korea, China, and Japan, are the three technology powerhouses that if they cooperate, it's so good for the world and so good for, I think, all of the countries of Asia, that I'm really hoping that this can be accomplished. There's a lot of talk right now in the United States that China is the new enemy, but I really hope that this is not the case. And I really hope that we don't have that attitude, because we will not solve any of the problems we face if we are in conflict with other countries rather than in cooperation with other countries. So I hope that all of you can play a role in supporting the Korean Green Deal and in supporting Korea to achieve all of the sustainable development goals. As Korean people, you should be very proud of what Korea has accomplished, and you should be very proud that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is the leader of the Sustainable Development Goals. He brought them to the world. He was the one who helped all of the world to agree on these goals. So this is a great contribution, I think, also of the Korean people to this global task. And I don't know of a country that's more talented than Korea, with so much skill, technology, capability, know-how. And that's why Korea's done so well in stopping this pandemic, but it's also why Korea can be such an important world leader to help all countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is my message, and it's also why I'm so happy to speak to you today, and why I'm so proud to have the association that I do with Korea, because I've been coming and visiting for 40 years and admire your country so much. And I really count on Korea to be a great leader in this cause. Thank you so much for letting me share these thoughts with you and to be with you this morning.
You touched on a number of important points, and I like to pick up from your last comment on the US-China relationship. Because as you said, the international governance deficit we have now, despite the fact we need global leadership from the most powerful states, is very worrisome. And at the heart of that problem, if US-China relationship goes more tense and tense, despite President Biden taking office, then I think it'll put a lot of countries in a difficult situation, and also it'll hamper the global efforts to find global solutions to global problems we have now. So how do you think we can persuade US and China to sit together? So what will be your advice to both Washington and Beijing?
I think it's extremely important that we have such a dialogue, and that these two big powers treat each other with respect and with seriousness. And unfortunately, during the period of Donald Trump, he was a president who decided one thing one day and then another thing the next day, and he would make a tweet, and that's how we would learn what our national policy was, on Twitter, which is a very bad way to run the world. It makes things very, very dangerous. And he raised the danger, but he also kept telling the American people, China's dangerous, China's dangerous. We're going to have a trade war with China, which is a very ignorant idea, because China is a very powerful country, and we don't want conflict. We really do want cooperation. And China, too, needs a cooperative environment, because it has a lot of economic development still to carry out, because China, though it has gained a lot of economic strength, is still a developing country, and it still would like, and of course, like all countries, would like peace in the world to continue to build its prosperity. And so I think what Trump started was very dangerous. Now, it's continued, unfortunately, even to the new administration, because there are many people in our parliament who have a very harsh view of China, even though they have never been to China. One thing I can tell you about the American people, they don't know very much about geography. They don't know very much about history. They don't know very much about other countries, but they have very strong views. And usually those views are not based on any real knowledge. They're just based on things that people have said and heard. So many of the people who attack China most in the United States, in our Congress, have never been to China. They just don't know. Yet they talk and talk and talk like politicians, but they don't make any sense. So this makes all of this very dangerous, because I think President Biden doesn't want to be attacked by the other party for being too soft on China. And so there's a lot of harsh rhetoric about China, and a lot of attacks from the United States about Taiwan and Hong Kong and Xinjiang, China, in Western China, places that Americans don't know very much about, and are just meddling in the internal business of China more than is safe for the world. And if there's one thing the Chinese government doesn't like, it doesn't like internal meddling in its domestic affairs. China is ready to cooperate internationally on many things, but it doesn't want the United States to meddle in the Taiwan relationship or in its internal affairs. And yet the United States is now emphasizing more and more the internal China issues. This is a very big, dangerous mistake. It's a very bad behavior if you're trying to find peace with another person only to point out all of their ills and not try to find their strengths. You know, I like to quote something from the Bible for Christian people that when, at least if the interpreter can translate it, when Jesus Christ says to someone making all the complaints, why do you point out the we call it the speck or the mote in that person's eye when you have a big beam in your own eye? I don't know if that translates well into Korean, but what Jesus was saying is don't only complain about the other people when you are making so many mistakes yourself. And I can tell you the United States makes so many mistakes. It should not be the one attacking China every day. We should be cleaning up our own problems because we have a beam in our own eye. We have so many problems, so much racism, so much hatred, so many shootings. It's a really stupid country, my country, in a lot of ways. And so we should be trying to solve our own problems rather than just attacking China. So this is what I'm trying to say, but unfortunately, it's very difficult right now. But I would like the people of Korea, I mean, the government of Korea to say this, the government of Japan to say this, because there's a lot of wisdom. You have the experience. China's your big neighbor. You don't want to provoke your big neighbor. There's no reason to. It's a big country. Don't make it mad. Cooperate. It's good business. It's good relations. It's good tourism. It's a good partnership economically. Big trade partner. A lot of money to make. A lot of technology needs. So no reason to provoke it. And that is what I am trying to explain in the United States every day. But it's very hard because we have very silly politicians, and then we have very, very silly newspaper pundits, we call them, you know, people who write the news columns that just try to make conflict, maybe to get more readers or because they don't know better. So this is really the big problem. We should be cooperating. And I think, you know, the idea of the United States is, well, if Korea is our ally and Japan is our ally and Australia is our ally and India is our ally, we can surround China. This is a very bad idea. It's as stupid as can be because it's such a dangerous thing to tell a powerful country, we're going to surround you. And so this idea that they call in English the Quad, the four countries, Japan, Korea, Australia, and India. If I were Korea, the first thing I would say is, no, thank you. We don't want to be part of a gang to gang up on China. That is very risky. And I would try to explain, Mr. Biden, Mr. President, look at the map. Why do we want to gang up on China? Please try to keep the temperature lower, the mood better, the relations more cooperative, because a conflict does not help us in Korea. It doesn't make us safe, especially with all of the problems on the Korean Peninsula. You don't want more trouble, you want less trouble. So I think that these are all strong reasons why we should help the American politicians to have some good sense, which sometimes is in short supply, but we really need it right now.
Jeff, you touched on the difference East Asian countries have made in response to COVID-19 pandemic. And one big difference we ourselves noticed is the degree of voluntary civic compliance with social distancing and other personal sanitation guidelines. But maybe if the same measures are enforced by law or by other regulation in Western countries, it may create problems because they may see as tension with their privacy and their freedom to do whatever they want to do, including not wearing a mask.
This is very correct. You know, I think part of what has happened is a difference of culture because in Korean society, I think people are well behaved and are responsible socially because even before this pandemic, if people were sick, they would wear a face mask so that they wouldn't infect other people. And if people were told in Korea to give their information by a telephone application or to respond to the public health officials to identify where they have been or who their contacts are, the Korean people were very cooperative. And in the United States, our culture is very different. People are not so responsible to each other. They don't like following the rules as much. And even as I'm sure everybody knows, many Americans objected to wearing a face mask. They said, it's my freedom not to wear a face mask. This, of course, is a very wrong idea about freedom, because what kind of freedom is it to have the freedom to make other people sick? That's not any kind of freedom that we want to defend. But the idea in the United States that you do what you want is an idea that many people have, and they resisted all of the cooperation that is needed to stop the spread of the epidemic. People refused to wear face masks. They did not want to stay home if they were told to stay home. They did not want to they did not want to stay away from large parties and gatherings. And they also many of our politicians believe that there should not be restrictions on dangerous activities. And so this really became a cultural phenomenon, but it shows what's wrong with the culture that is too individualistic. It's a kind of selfish culture where people only care about themselves. They're not thinking about other people. They're not conforming with the social need. And they don't understand even that they have a responsibility to society. And many of our politicians well, Trump was very much like this. He was really, I think, a mentally ill man, but also a very, very selfish man. And he just told people, don't wear face masks, don't worry, don't care. And he kind of preached irresponsibility. And since he had many followers, many people followed him and they became sick. Even his political rallies spread a lot of disease. People have studied how much disease came after each of Trump's rallies because his followers came to these big stadiums without face masks and without precautions and then spread the disease. So this is a big problem of American society. And I don't know how easy it is to change the culture. You know, Korean culture is at least 2,000 years old. I think following Confucian teaching of social responsibility is a long, long, long history in Korea. And in America, our culture is both young and unfortunately not very responsible right now. So I hope there will come a time when we learn some lessons about this. But right now, America is very divided culturally because some part of America believes that we should be more Confucian, and other parts of America are believing that they should do whatever they want and no one should tell them what to do. And these are two kinds of cultures. And we're really divided right now, which is one of the reasons why we can't agree on any policies to stop all of this harm.
네, 삭스 교수님 감사합니다. 마침 오늘 방청객으로 그 삭스 교수님과 지속가능 분야 활동을 같이 하고 계시는 김원수 전 유엔 사무차장께서 함께 하셨는데요. 네, 그러면 여러분께서 자유롭게 한번 질의를 하는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다.
No, this is Hyung-soo.
Okay. And
네,
then
this is Hyung-soo, Jeff. Yeah, as you say, we have bad historical experience among Japan, Korea, and China. So the problem influences among many kinds of problems. So it's very difficult to solve the problem. But thank you for you remind me over thinking over to cooperate pandemic and climate crisis. So I think it's a better way to cooperate two kinds of problems in the world. And thank you for you reminding me.
Thank you for such a wonderful remark. And I can tell you, if the three countries can cooperate with each other, you will have the most successful part of the world. If Korea, Japan, and China can cooperate with each other, it will be a remarkable success for the three countries, because all three countries are so talented, so many skills, so much technological know-how, so many shared values, actually, like the Confucian values. You know, the cultures are very similar, but Japan treated Korea and China very badly in the 20th century, with Korea as a colony and very cruel, and invading China. And all three countries are very proud and very careful and worried about their neighbors. So it's understandable. But I do think countries change a lot. And you know, Japan is a very different country in 2021 from what it was in 1895 or 1945. And it learned a lot from the disastrous experience of the Pacific War and the colonial period. But Japan is very proud also. And so it doesn't want to say that some things were wrong. And so the fights continue over the history, over the textbooks, over, you know, describing the past events. But the truth is, I know all three countries, I could only imagine if the three countries can cooperate, it will be amazing for world history, because there will be so much progress and so many breakthroughs of new science, new technology, new ideas, if peace can come. So I'm really hoping it can happen, because, you know, I think that the contributions that the three countries would make together if they cooperate for the whole world would be enormous. So that's my hope.
고맙습니다. 제프리 교수님 강의 잘 들었습니다. 좋으신 말씀 많이 도움이 됐고요. 저도 아주 감명 깊게 들었습니다. 이제 한 가지 간단한 질문을 드리겠습니다. 백신 공급이 이제 시작이 됐고요. 이제 선진국을 중심으로 코로나를 극복했다는 이제 말이 나오고 있을 정도로 지금 백신이 활발히 공급이 되고 있습니다. 그런데 반면에 개도국을 보면은 2023년쯤이나 돼야 백신 접종이 완료될 것 같다라는 그런 전망이 나와 있죠. 그래서 이 개도국과 선진국 간의 백신의 그 집단 면역의 그 여러 가지 갭이 많이 아직까지 크게 되고 이제 걱정도 많이 되는데 그 결국 나중에 또 그 서로 지구촌 간에 이동이 또 있을 수밖에 없는 거고 사람들 통해서 이러한 갭을 어떻게 극복하면 좋은지 이 문제를 어떻게 해결하는 게 좋은지 교수님께서 좀 고민 있으시면 부탁드리겠습니다.
Actually, I don't think any country yet has really solved the problems. One country, Israel, has the highest use of the vaccines per capita, and the number of cases is going down quickly in Israel. So maybe it is close to solving the problem. In the United States, we still have a huge, huge way ahead because roughly 15%, maybe 1 in 6 of the population has received both doses of a vaccine. Maybe 30%, 1 in 3, has received 1 dose. And we're still many months away before we have coverage. And that's true of most countries in the world, except for a few tiny countries that have been able to get a higher coverage. So even in the rich countries, it will take really several more months or even until the end of 2021 to cover most of the population. And as you know, every day there is a risk that the virus mutates and that the vaccine doesn't keep as effective as it was. There's even evidence that the variant of the virus in South Africa is less controllable by the vaccines now. So this is a big worry that a new mutation would make the current vaccines ineffective or much less effective. And this is why we need to hurry cooperatively for the whole world, just like you say. So I have been emphasizing to all of the countries and to the World Health Organization in my role as an advisor to the United Nations to make a plan that is a very clear, explicit plan for how to achieve the coverage for everybody before the end of 2022. This has to be done on a global and cooperative basis. There is not such a plan yet. And I was organizing a meeting with some of the public health leaders worldwide a couple of weeks ago, emphasizing, just like you said, how important it is to have a plan. And they promised that they are going to accelerate the work on such a plan. And then we are going to meet again within the next week or two with the World Health Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the US government, and other governments to examine the proposals for such a plan. But I believe to have this, we need the cooperation also of China, of India, of Russia, because each one has some vaccine that it can make, but we need to have confidence that the vaccines are effective and safe, and we need to work together on the global coverage. So the fact of the matter is we do not yet have a global strategy to end this pandemic. And countries need to know, they do understand that it's not good enough to end it within your own borders, because that will be better than nothing, but it is not going to allow the reopening of normal life, of international travel, of trade, of tourism. And so we need that global plan to do this. And like you say, I'm actually working on it directly and personally because I have a responsibility in the UN to help to do this, and I'm leading a commission on the pandemic, and we're using the commission to try to push for this kind of planning to take place, but it's not yet happening adequately.
네, 그럼 마지막으로 구청장님 말씀 듣고 오늘 행사 마무리하도록 하겠습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 오늘 제프리삭스 교수님의 강연을 들으니 우리가 코로나19 상처를 잘 봉합하고 함께 미래를 준비한다면 오히려 코로나 이전의 세상보다 훨씬 더 나은 세상을 만들어 나갈 수 있을 것으로 기대됩니다. 오늘 좋은 강연을 해주신 제프리삭스 교수님의 건승을 빌고 또 주민 여러분의 가정에 늘 건강과 행복이 가시기를 기원드립니다. 감사합니다.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, let me thank you for inviting me and hosting me, and for your concern and all of the citizens' concern for the global cooperation and for sustainable development. It's very inspiring, and it's very important for Korea to continue its great leadership role. And please count on me to help in any way.
네, 오늘 강연해주신 삭스 교수님 감사합니다. 그리고 함께해주신 주민 여러분 감사드립니다. 이것으로서 세계석학 온라인 강연회를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.